Hi folks, and welcome to my review of the British Grand Prix. Well, that was an eventful weekend at Silverstone, wasn't it? Obviously we saw the sprint format introduced at the Grand Prix for the first time in 2021, and it will be featured two more Grand Prix this year. So I'll provide my thoughts later on. My thoughts on the sprint format, but your top three in the race on Sunday of Lewis Hamilton, Charles Leclerc of Ferrari, and Valtteri Bottas, but that doesn't tell the whole story at all. Um, but we'll start off with looking back at qualifying, and obviously qualifying took place on a Friday with this new sprint format, and what a fantastic qualifying session! I must say, for me, one of the best qualifying sessions of the season so far. And what I liked about the qualifying on Friday was the fact that took place at 6 o'clock, which meant that people finishing after normal circumstances, people who've got 9 till 5 jobs, obviously then they could get back in time to watch the qualifying. So I did like that aspect of qualifying being held at 6 o'clock and on a Friday as well. So I did like that, and we were treated in for a fantastic session, and we saw Lewis Hamilton take pole and on Friday, and a phenomenal lap from Mercedes. And let's be honest, in first three practice sessions, Mercedes were quite a way off Red Bull. So to actually see them pull it back in qualifying was quite impressive from the team and also Lewis as well. So yeah, really good qualifying session. And obviously, we saw George Russell as well. The reception, not reception, but um, the way he was able to deliver, particularly in Q2, that lap that made him get into Q3 was a phenomenal lap from George. And yeah, really good drive from the Brit. Shame he wasn't able to convert it into points on Sunday. But it will come for George, and he's the thing is that with George, last four races, including the race at Silverstone, shows that Williams are in amongst the midfield battle, and they're not right at the back where they were in say 2019. They're right in there, fighting the midfield teams in contention for points. Although they haven't scored any points as of yet, you just feel that with the way things are going with Williams and George Russell, you just feel that points they will come. They just got to keep at it. But yeah, George was definitely one of the standout drivers in qualifying on Friday. And then obviously also Lando as well, and Lando Norris put in another fine lap and also another fine weekend for McLaren, which I'll come on to talk about soon. But yeah, all three Brits, I must say, did a really good job in qualifying throughout the weekend. And yeah, solid jobs from all three. And we'll come on to obviously talk about Lewis as well. But as for the sprint qualifying session, which took place on a Saturday, so it's basically a half an hour event, so a 17 lap race. And yeah, obviously we saw Max Verstappen take pole in sprint qualifying, closely followed. Not, I'll say closely followed, but no, with both Mercedes finishing behind Max. We also saw Checo Perez unfortunately have a spin in sprint qualifying, and that led to him really not being able to, unfortunately, having to start the race from the pit lane on Sunday, and not really being able to make in the inroads that he would have liked. So yeah, difficult weekend for Checo Perez Silverstone, but I've got no doubt that he will bounce back. But speaking of Red Bull, really was a disappointing Sunday for them. A day that started for Max Verstappen anyway. A day that started with so much promise and potential for another race victory for Max Verstappen, but that was quashed on the opening lap. So we saw a really good opening half lap battle between Max and also Lewis. And then it culminated going into cops, didn't it? So no, my take on the incident. First and foremost, it was good to see Max climb out the car and that he's okay. So that's the first thing to say. But looking at that incident, from my point of view, from the camera angles that I could see, Lewis, although he was alongside Max, I didn't get the impression that he was ahead at any point. He was on the, if I remember correctly, on the Wellington straight. He was slightly ahead of Max at that point, but going into Cops, Lewis, whilst he was up alongside Max, he didn't really didn't really get wasn't in front, I should say, of Verstappen, and going into Cops, he wasn't quite close enough to the apex, which meant that he that it was, and it quite a minimal touch as well, but it was enough to send Max into the barriers at really high speed as well. So that no doubt will have been um, quite a scary accident for Red Bull and for Max Verstappen as well. But like I say, thankfully he was able to get out of the car. He's okay. But yeah, you could totally understand Max feeling a bit what's the word? Bit yeah, just not feeling right straight after that incident, and being a bit winded. That's the word. Being a bit winded after that incident, which you could totally understand. But like I say, my take on the incident, I could understand Lewis getting a penalty, and I think that was the right decision. But obviously, we saw post race Christian Horner saying that he didn't feel that the punishment was fit for the crime. So I'd be interested to hear from Christian in terms of what he would uh, feel would be a suitable punishment for that incident. But it's racing, and look, you are going to get these incidents. But we saw in the previous race in Austria, before Silverstone, saw Lando Norris and also Checo as well. They got penalties for you know something similar, albeit the person who was on the um, penalties that Lando and Checo were awarded for. But yeah, so you can understand, because of the penalties that Lando and Checo received in Austria, it was going to happen to Lewis at Silverstone. But yeah, I mean, like, it's difficult because you could see it as a racing incident, but at the same time, Lewis, it was always going to be difficult for him to back out. And as a racing driver going into a corner at high speed, you going alongside another driver, you're not going to back out. But I think had Lewis been closer to the apex, then perhaps that incident wouldn't have taken place. If Max perhaps had maybe given a bit more space, then perhaps that wouldn't have happened. But look, at high speed, no, it's tough. It's tough, but yeah. But like I said, I think the penalty was fair at the time. But whether there are any more consequences as a result of that incident, we'll see. But also, from what we've seen, particularly on the Monday morning anyway, we've seen Red Bull and also Mercedes put out statements on their Twitter page that I've seen anyway, to say that unfortunately Lewis has received racist comments, and I'm really disgusted and appalled to think that people think it's okay to send um, racist comments, not just to Lewis, but to in all walks of life. Some people are think it's okay to send those comments, and to be like that. And look, whilst Mercedes and Red Bull and other teams are rivals on the track, off it they're united, and there's no place for racism whatsoever. Whether you're in the Lewis camp, whether you're in the Verstappen camp, or whoever's um fault you felt that incident was down to. Yes, Lewis caused the incident, but that is no excuse, none whatsoever, to send him racist abuse, and it's just not on at all. So, yeah, really disgusted and appalled by those who have sent racist abuse to Lewis, and I hope they get named and shamed, and I hope they get punished. I hope they do, because, like I say, there's no place for racism whatsoever. Um, but as I say, really difficult Sunday for Red Bull. So no points in the constructors, but they are still ahead in the constructors, albeit by a very small margin. And Max still finds himself leading the Drivers' Championship. So still one more race to go before the summer break, which will be taking place in Hungary. And whilst it's a track that Lewis and Mercedes have gone well at, it's also a track that Red Bull have performed well at as well. So, don't count out Red Bull at Hungary. And, particularly with Hungary being um, having not many straights, being a slow, a winding track as well, that might suit Red Bull, might suit some other teams as well. So yeah, difficult Sunday for Red Bull, but I've got no doubts that they will bounce back stronger. But a good Sunday turned out to be for Mercedes. For Lewis, the king of Silverstone, really had to show a lot of battling qualities to get back out in front. Obviously helped towards the latter stage by his teammate Valtteri Bottas, who again played that team player role, let Lewis go by, and that enabled Lewis to chase down Charles Leclerc and was able to get by in the very dying stages of the Grand Prix. But yeah, Lewis never gave up, kept fighting, and yeah, the Silverstone crowd no doubt delighted with seeing Lewis win yet another British Grand Prix, and perhaps this could be the turning point of the season. Who knows? But yeah, I think we're going to be treated in for a titanic battle from now till the end of the season between Max and Lewis. And yeah, as I just mentioned about Valtteri Bottas being that team player, Valtteri again ending up on the podium now. So that's 3 races on the trot now, I believe, that he's finished on the podium. So yeah, not a bad weekend for Valtteri. Wasn't able to. I think the only disappointment that he'll have when he looks back at the weekend, particularly on race day, was the fact that he himself wasn't able to close the gap to Charles Leclerc, unlike Lewis, who was able to do that. So I guess that's perhaps one of the disappointments that Bottas will have. But let's not forget also the fact that his drinks bottle drinks wasn't working during the race day. So on a really hot day, and for Valtteri to have to contend with the fact that his drinks wasn't working either. So all in all, when you consider that, I think Valtteri actually did a decent job. And again, playing that team player role, and another podium for Valtteri, and he just needs to be able to continue to do that for the rest of the season. And if he does that in Hungary, if he picks up another podium, then I've said it before, and I'll say again, in the fact that I think Mercedes will have no other option but to keep Valtteri, because he is that perfect team player. And yeah, so that's my thoughts on the situation, the driver situation at Mercedes going into 2022. And when we look back at the Silverstone Grand Prix, look, all the focus, you could argue, will be on what happened between Lewis and Max. But I think it's also important to remember what an unbelievable performance from Charles Leclerc. You know, I don't think any of us were expecting Ferrari to be up there, challenging for the race win. When you consider how poor a weekend they had in Paul Ricard, no, these last 3 Grand Prix they've bounced back really well. Austria, I'd say the 2 weekends in Austria, I wouldn't say they were fantastic weekends, but they were good weekends for Ferrari. But you got to say, Charles Leclerc did a phenomenal job on race day, and even throughout the weekend, Ferrari looked quick, and I was quite surprised to see them as high as they were, particularly in qualifying, also sprint qualifying as well. Where Charles was able to really keep Bottas honest during sprint qualifying, and then on race day, Charles. No, once he was out in front, to be fair, he looked quite comfortable, although he did have issues. Charles did a really good job, and it was only that mistake he made going on to going onto the curb when going into cops. That was another mistake, first one of the few mistakes he made throughout the weekend. But it was that mistake which enabled Lewis to get by in the closing stages. But despite that, there are so many positives that Charles and Ferrari can take from the weekend. And yeah, for me, one of the star drivers of the weekend, Charles Leclerc. Really good drive, really good weekend for the Monegasque driver, and for Carlos Sainz as well. It could have been a weekend of what might have been. So unfortunately, he had a slow pit stop. Um, on race day on Sunday, and without that, he would have no doubt been finished ahead of Dan Ricciardo. But perhaps could have been close to challenging Lando to finishing fourth. So it could have been a bit more of a stronger weekend for Ferrari. But like I say, so many positives that both Carlos and also Charles can take from the weekend. Um, so I just mentioned very briefly about Daniel Ricciardo and McLaren. So both McLaren drivers finishing race day in a Ferrari sandwich. So finishing sorry, not quite a Ferrari sandwich because Bottas finished third. So ignore that. But yeah, Bottas finishing third, and then Norris and Ricciardo finishing fourth and fifth. Another solid weekend for McLaren. Which keeps them ahead of Ferrari in the constructors. And there's just that consistency with Lando, isn't it? He's just continues to be like that and just continues to have a stellar season. And look, obviously Lando, will have been disappointed, may have been disappointed not to have finished on the podium. But I think even if he didn't have that slow pit stop during the race, then I think Bottas would have got him anyway, so it would have been difficult for Norris to keep Bottas behind him. But even so, finishing fourth and fifth in the race day on Sunday, really good result for McLaren, and also good result for Daniel Ricciardo as well. So continuing his good form from second time round in Austria. So two good performances on the track for Daniel Ricciardo. That fifth place finish being his best finish for McLaren in 2021. Perhaps it comes later than he would have liked, but you know what, a good solid weekend for Daniel, and definitely take a lot of positives from the weekend, and yeah, really hope he can definitely build on these last two performances in Austria and also at Silverstone as well. Also, just a few also shout outs as well to Alpine. So really good weekend for Alpine with Fernando Alonso finishing seventh and Esteban Ocon finishing ninth. So Fernando again, like Charles Leclerc, Fernando one of the stars of the weekend. Had a fantastic start in sprint qualifying. So I think he started 11th and then ended up going up to 7th on the opening lap. So yeah, cracking drive from Fernando, and that really set the hallmarks for Fernando to have a good race on Sunday, and he was able to keep Lance Stroll behind him on race day, so for the majority of that second half of the race, and yeah, really good showing from Fernando, and he definitely looking in from the outside, looking in, looks like Fernando is starting to get that a lot more comfortable with that Alpine, and yeah, really good drive from Fernando, and also good drive from Esteban Ocon as well. A much stronger weekend for the Frenchman, and Silverstone's normally a track that he normally goes around really well. So yeah, good to see Esteban doing well after three difficult races. But yeah, couple of points for Esteban, and hopefully he can build on that now for the rest of the season. And that result at Silverstone will give him some momentum. But yeah, another good drive from Lance Stroll as well in the Aston Martins. No doubt he would have been a bit frustrated not to have got past Fernando, in particularly in that second half of the race, because he spent a lot of time behind that Alpine. So yeah, bit of frustration, no doubt, that Lance wasn't able to finish seventh. But even so, not a bad race day for Lance Stroll, and yeah, good points for Aston Martin, and also a final point for Yuki Tsunoda. as well. One of those drivers who actually finishing 10th, no, went unnoticed. No, obviously we saw the attention being given to Fernando, also Lewis, and also Max as well, but also Yuki as well. Yuki did without without getting the attention as I mentioned as the others. Um, not a bad job from Yuki, and a good point for him and for AlphaTauri as well, and for Yuki finishing ahead of Pierre Gasly as well. So yeah, really good performance from Yuki on race day. But yeah, not a bad result for AlphaTauri, but I'm sure they'll be hoping for more at Hungary, and you never know, that might cause one or two surprises at Hungary. So that's the end of my review of the British Grand Prix. I was going to mention quickly actually about sprint format. My thoughts on the sprint format. I think it wasn't a bad experience. I think I enjoyed the qualifying session on Friday. Sprint qualifying the session, I would say, on Saturday that is. I wouldn't say it was quite as eventful as the race on Sunday, but even so, obviously we got to see Fernando go up to a flyer on Saturday. We saw Checo have that spin during the sprint race. So no, there were one or two incidents during that sprint qualifying, but look, it's not going to be perfect first time round. No, and perhaps Formula One have said themselves that they're open to making changes to the sprint weekends. But my overall thoughts actually, it wasn't too bad. I wouldn't say it was fantastic, but I wouldn't say it was disastrous either. So not a bad not a bad way. No, not a bad way to introduce the sprint format into Formula One, and yeah, not bad at all. So yeah, that is the end now of my review of the British Grand Prix, and next up will be Hungary. So hope you all have a great week, and if you want to talk things Formula One, I'm on Twitter at Baggies20, and I'm also on Instagram, Manish Patel 89. Take care, everyone.